Hello and welcome to today's topic of successful aging. This has been an important topic in the field of aging and has led to a lot of debate over the years. So here's a look at Rowan Kahn's model of successful aging. And what you see is that there's three different parts to it, and that the three parts as a whole are what constitute successful aging. And as you'll see, they're all the parts are interconnected in different ways, and I'll kind of explain that. And you can see even from like the Venn diagrams that they're interconnected. So first, let's just start with engagement with life. So how interested in life are you? How far do you go to learn new things, to interact with others? This is important, especially as we age. We need to continue our engagement with life. Otherwise, we see that our cognitive abilities, physical abilities, and disease actually tend to increase. This is one of the reasons why loneliness is something that we want to avoid, and social support is something that we want to strive for. So continuing to be engaged with life is very important. Next, high cognitive and physical function. So how do we keep our physical function, cognitive function at peak performance? Well, definitely staying engaged is one of the best ways to do this. So figure out new things that you want to learn, pursue them, try to challenge yourself both physically and mentally. So try to continue with exercise routines, try to continue with cognitive functioning. And as we'll talk about in the next chapter, physical function is actually one of the best ways to improve cognitive functioning. It has to do with improving the cardiovascular system, but also working out improves areas that are important for learning and memory and for neurogenesis, which is involved with creating new memories. And lastly, avoiding disease and disability. So disease and disability can definitely get in the way with us engaging in life, which in turn can affect our physical function or cognitive function, or disability and disease could have a direct impact on our physical function and cognitive function. So this model has received criticism over the years, kind of from a lot of different angles. Probably the most common criticism is that it's not very subjective, meaning that people would go in and write their answers and say they have some kind of disability or chronic disease. Categorically, they'd be labeled as someone who hasn't aged successfully. And you could see that that could make people not feel good about themselves. And there's definitely like this subjective component where like maybe someone has high blood pressure or someone is dealing with some kind of chronic condition, but they're still doing pretty well. And this could be the case too for physical functioning and cognitive functioning. So say someone has some kind of physical disability, like they're not able to walk, they're in a wheelchair. Definitely an individual can age successfully from a wheelchair. So these are some of the things to think about that has definitely drawn the highest levels of criticism for this model. But in general, like if you didn't take it all that seriously and you just thought about, oh, how can I do the best that I can? It's important to focus on ways to engage with life, to work on your cognitive and physical functioning, and do your best to avoid disease and disability. But also kind of take it with a grain of salt. That's like, let's just do the best that we can here because all these seem to be important. And I think that's a fair way to look at this model, not as it's perfect and this is 100% what successful aging is, but more like, well, these are some things that are probably pretty important, and that's the way I see this model. So another thing that they talk about in their paper is the difference between nurture and nature over time. So what they looked at was triglyceride levels, so looking in the blood, and basically what they find is that our genetics play a really big role earlier in life, but as time goes on, nurture has more of a role than nature does. So what that means is like we have our genetic predispositions, but as we get older and older and older, we've had more time to make our own decisions in life, and that's going to change the way that outcomes play out. So for instance, if you have good genes for being healthy, but you spend your whole life eating very unhealthy food, probably at some point your genes protecting you from eating bad food are going to lose out to all the bad food that you're eating. And this is kind of what it's saying here, is that basically our genes are very helpful. But the longer we live, it seems that there's more and more pressure from our environment. So basically, that the longer we live, the more our environment plays a role in our outcomes. And lastly, there was just a graph here about social support and how important it is. So it just shows that higher levels of social support, you're more protected against mortality. So the idea is that those that are more engaged with life, have more friends, they tend to live longer than those that don't. So yeah, this is a quick look at successful aging. I'm interested to see what people think. Are there different ways we can improve the model of successful aging? Is it helpful? Is it not helpful? All this stuff I'm interested in, because it's important to decide, kind of as a culture, as a society, how do we want to get older? How do we want this process to play out? And it can shape the decisions that we make throughout our lives. So that's successful aging, and thanks for watching.